I'm very pleased to be talking with Stacey Cohen today. We are talking about cracking the code to college admissions success. Stacey, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining me today.
Great to see you, Liz. So good to be here.
And I wanted to give a little introduction to you, Stacey, so that people know why we're listening to you on this topic, right? What expertise that you are bringing. And you have coached people in public relations, marketing, design agency with offices uh, um, uh, in New York and Connecticut. You're the CEO and founder of Co-Communications, and you have been on the TEDx stage as well, and have been a contributor to the Huffington Post, Entrepreneur, and been featured in Forbes, Crain's Entrepreneur, and a suite of other national media. And you're an entrepreneur at heart, so you also bring that level of expertise as well. And is there anything else that you want to share that's just like, if I could take you and encapsulate you in like a minute, is there anything else you want to share about your background so that people can get to know you a little bit better?
Yes, absolutely. I think an important part of my narrative is that I'm a twin. So most singletons, if you will, don't know what it's like growing up as a twin, but I was faced with, a lot of comparisons, sometimes insensitive remarks like, why do you weigh more than your sister? And how come you get better grades? And one aunt in particular, I don't even think she knew our names, Liz. She would just call us the twins. And so that really created a need at a very early age to stand out and create a unique identity. And what is really interesting, undergraduate degree, I was in human development. And then fast forward, my journey led me to pursuing a career in marketing, and I also have an MBA in marketing. So I think when you bridge those two things together and really understand people and understand how you can best help or serve people, it just all came together. And I'm so happy because I never thought the book would have landed directed towards teens, because the first book was, as you know, it was to parents.
Mm, yes, yes. So let's talk a little bit about your book that has just come out, right? So Brand Up, the Ultimate Playbook for college and career success in the digital world. And this is available as paperback. It's available in ebook form. We also have like a little mini version that we made, which is, uh, let's see, what did we call that? Winning the college admissions game, right? And I hear tell you're working on an audio book as well.
Yes, yes.
Very
I
cool.
this
It's
this
not
week,
available yet.
and if my voice cracks, forgive me, but I am recording an audiobook which will be done this week. It's also, well, of course, available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, and Target.
Yes, awesome. And so what's the backstory for that? Like, how did that book come together, Brand Up?
It's a very interesting backstory, and it started when my older daughter was in high school, in a very, very competitive school district where it was the norm almost for kids to have like over 4.0 GPAs. So a lot of kids had 4.2 GPAs, and understandably, it was very high anxiety, high stress. And I had an epiphany. I was like, wow, as a professional marketer, seeing all the competition going on in the fierce slots for schools, did you really need to figure out how to stand out so you get to the top of the decision makers list? And fast forward, I have to say that I knew that I had a book in me. But again, my first iteration of the book was not to teens. And I was curious because all of these statistics were coming out that 75% of the admissions officers are now looking at kids' social media and also in 2017, and I discussed this in my TEDx talk, that Harvard had accepted these 10 kids, and these 10 kids formed a private Facebook group. And because of bad social media behavior, all of their admissions were revoked. So think about it. It's like it brings to light that smart kids are not always smart on social media. So decided to write an article, contributor for Huffington Post at the time, on are there any schools across the country that teach digital leadership? And I found one school that in North Broward, Florida, not only did they teach it, but it was mandatory for ninth graders. So ninth graders had to take this class, and it was just as mandatory as a gym or physical fitness type of class. And I wrote about it, and then magic happened. My now two contributing authors, Alan Katzman with Social Assurity and Jason Schaefer, who actually created the curriculum and taught the class, both of them got in contact with me, and all of us became fast friends because we were all so in sync about this void that we saw in schools, and the need to really prepare kids to put forth their best digital footprint. So on a trip to Florida, and speaking to Jason, he said, look, I know you're coming to Florida for a vacation, but would you sit in one of my classes? And I did. And I was blown away at these 14-year-olds that were just so expressive in their narrative, being able to share their uniqueness, their superpower. Came back to New York. I wrote another Huffington Post article, and this one went viral. So I knew that I had something, and then that's when the book journey began. And of course, it was without hesitation that I asked both Jason and Alan to be contributing authors. Because remember, I'm not an educator, I'm a marketer. I've always believed people need to play to their strengths. So when you look at the book, all of the interactive exercises are Jason's contribution. There's a chapter on LinkedIn that Alan Katzman contributed, and another chapter on how to leverage social media for college admissions. So the three of us came together and really, I think, came up with a resource, a book that my dream is I would love to see this in every high school across the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know we've talked about this before, where I love how you are framing this in a very positive, what kids can do way. There's so much messages of, oh, don't even use social media, or it's a waste, or you have to protect your kids from social media and don't go on it, and all of this, instead of saying, and as a parent of teenagers, I know that saying don't do things generally doesn't work so well.
Yes,
So, right.
it usually does backfire.
It doesn't always work so well, but shifting it to, no, this is actually a tool that can be used really well, and that they can learn how to be savvy with social media and how to use it to help them get into colleges they like. And there's other parts in the book that talk about entrepreneurship, right? Landing in, this is about getting jobs too, right? Like how do you build this, because everyone's looking at it these days, right? And kids are on social media all the time, like we all are. So how do we use it instead of being afraid of it, or
Yes,
try to
yes, yes.
keep people off of
Right,
it, which doesn't
right.
work.
How do you
Yeah.
how do you show your best self? Because Google is the new resume. And this is a crazy statistic. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but in 1 minute, there are almost 6 million Google searches. So someone is maybe searching for you or me at the moment. So it's really important that teens understand the implications and the consequences of their behavior on social media. And if someone is searching for you, you want them to find more positive attributes.
Yes, we do. Yes. Um, so could you talk a little bit more about personal branding for teens? Can you just explain
Sure.
what you mean by that, why it's
Yes.
important for teens?
Yes, absolutely. And I always love to talk anything about personal branding, and truly it's for life if you think about it, because I believe like you've got to start that personal branding muscle early in the digital age, but it carries you through your life. And there's really a misconception about personal branding. A lot of people don't know what it is, but personal branding it's not about me. A lot of people think, oh, well, if you're going to go through the process of personal branding, you must be a narcissist. But that is so not the case, because personal branding is about what value you bring to the world. So every kid, as they're applying to college, they have to understand, like, why should the admission officer choose me over similar applicants? And
Mhm.
so that leads into other things. Why should I be chosen for that scholarship? If a kid is applying for a job or an internship, why should I be selected for that? So again, you need to, it begins with self-awareness and figuring out, what are your passions? What are your talents? What are your goals? It's like building the foundation, and it's really tough work, Liz, because it's it's about being self-reflective, and that's not really natural for, let's say, a 14 or 15-year-old. But it's really important because it's going to guide the admissions process and also ultimately the career path much more readily.
That's so interesting because I know just me as a human being, when I post something on social media or I write an article or I put something out publicly, what it what I have to do beforehand is figure out what I believe on that, right? There is an introspective, there is a reflection period, and it it does help me figure out what I value as a person and what I want to put out into the world. And that's so cool to think of that for that teens have that opportunity too, right?
Yes,
To
yes,
use it that
yes.
way.
Right, because personal branding is not about being authentic. It's the opposite. You want to be authentic, but you want to dig deep and figure out again, what is your superpower? What is your gift that you want to share with the world? But it's also, and you captured it, it's also about being intentional.
Hmm.
So it's like you have to be thoughtful about what you're posting. But let me share something with the audience, the parents that may be listening to this. There is a term called sharenting that I came across in
Mm.
writing the book. And I actually spoke to a sharenting expert. Sharenting, if you think about it, as parents, like, we are the first ones that are responsible for our kids' digital footprint. A lot of moms, they go for a sonogram, get a picture, boom, it goes up on Facebook or their Instagram, right? So one thing, and I myself was not behaving properly in, the world of sharenting ethics. But I now, if I'm going to post anything, any pictures with my kids, my two girls who are now in their 20s, I will absolutely ask them permission. And I think parents need to be good role models for their kids on social media and show them the consideration and say, hey, this picture that I took on our family vacation, quickly show it to them. Are you okay if I post it? And they may be fine with it or they may not be, but us as parents, we need to respect that.
I love that. I had not heard that term before, so I'm learning that right now. And what a great thing that is to learn and to mirror to show for your kids so they can, because they'll be doing that if you do that, if you model that for your kids, right? If you are always asking them, they'll get into the habit of also doing that for their friends, for each other, for other people, which also does help them going forward in building that. Yeah, we got to be careful. Yeah,
Exactly.
because they right from the
Yes.
little baby picture before they're even born. We want,
Yes.
we're putting the
Or,
things
or
up
or
and all this.
pictures of them which are so adorable,
Right.
in the bathtub,
Right. I
it's
know.
just,
What have we done? Right.
but we need to be thoughtful. And I have heard, because I speak to teens and college students all the time, that um, they point their finger at their parents for not such great social media behavior. And then, of course, parents are pointing their finger at the kids. And I think, be a good role model. That's what it comes down to. Be a good role model, show respect, because that's what we're teaching kids to do, is show respect. I always tell kids, before they post, they have to put it through something that I call pure. So pure is positive,
Hmm.
U is unbiased, R is respectful, and E is for ethical. Or you can also think, would this be something I would want my mom or my grandma to see? Or is this something that, I'd like to see like streaming across a digital billboard in Times
Right.
Square, right? So I think it's, just have to be very intentional. It's the same thing, and some kids are very unaware of this. I also warn kids that texting is not even safe. There have been so many situations that a kid will text something that might be a little racist or sexist, and it will be shared.
Right.
It will be shared. So it's, it's a world where we need to have eyes in the back of our head.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we have to be mindful of all of it, right? Like all of our communications, right? And making sure we're putting out things that we want that would reflect well on us, right?
Right, right. So
Yeah,
just every single touch point does matter.
right.
Even, for example, like a lot of kids when they're in high school, they will have these like cutesy, like, email names, you know, like kiss my butt at gmail.com. Do you know
Right,
what I'm
right,
saying? It's
something
like,
like that, right.
that's not appropriate when you're emailing an admissions officer.
Right, probably
The-
not so much.
Right, but the good news is you could still keep that Gmail. It will
Right,
forward your emails to the new, more fitting one, which is typically like first name, last name. Sometimes you have to add a number or an initial, but these are the ways that we have to think.
right. Yes. And let's see. So, um, what tips can you give teens for making their social media work for them while still reflecting who they are and what they care about? Right. So this is a little bit along the lines of that authentically you and distinguishing like your superpower, what things that you want to be offering out into the world. Like, is there, how do people distinguish that? How do people break that up? I don't know. Do you have any other
Oh,
thoughts on that?
so yeah, yeah. And again, I just want to emphasize that everything that kids post online is permanent and discoverable. So again, I'm not telling them not to be themselves, be
Right.
just be intentional, pause before you post. And
Yep.
also, it's, I so strongly believe, as does my contributing author Alan Katzman, that kids need to be on LinkedIn by the age of 16. So you hand over the car keys, tell Sarah, jump on, it's time to jump on LinkedIn. It's not, a glitzy kind of platform as Instagram, but it's really important to start building that professional
Mm,
muscle. And it's also, one of the tricks or hacks. Have you heard the term demonstrated interest by chance? I don't know how,
no.
I forget how old your kids are. So when my kids were going to school, and they're now in their 20s, like I said, a lot of the parents said, you must, if there's one school that they really want to attend, you must go on the college tour and sign up. Because think about it, especially with declining acceptance rates, and that's exactly what's going on now. what's happening is that they want to know if they put out an acceptance that there is a high likelihood that this kid will enroll. And so they're looking for like indications of that. Because of COVID, going on college tours fell down quite a bit, as we know. And so now there is a lot of big data and algorithms, and schools are looking at, and there's a whole chapter dedicated to this, are kids registering on our website? And that's what you need to do. Let's just say, your top 5 schools, you need to register on the website, but you also have to make sure that you visit the website regularly. And because they're getting metrics on how long is this kid visiting, how long are they staying, and how frequently. So they're getting all these metrics to judge this. And the other thing is, the beauty about LinkedIn, one of these top 5 schools, like let's just say a kid wants to go to Vanderbilt for engineering. They should be connecting with the chair of the engineering department, alumni, admissions officers, and engaging in their posts. And not just necessarily liking, but if the chair of the engineering department puts up a really interesting, let's say a white paper, the kid can say, this is such an interesting article. Thank you for sharing. So really building those relationships. And along with that, I have a whole chapter on networking. And I'll share this with you, and I know that you can understand this. I've always said to my girls when they were in high school, in this life, it's not just what you know. You're both 2 very bright girls. It's also about who you know. And of course, they did not take that very seriously. And, I would offer, oh, I can introduce you to, and look, this is the independence of a teen.
Right.
They want to do it on their own.
Yep.
But I kids need to be taught how to network and how to whether it's a warm intro or someone they don't know, how do you approach this person? So in the book, I give samples. As a matter of fact, this book is not just about personal branding, it's about essential life skills. And one of them is networking, one of them is interviewing. And a lot of people will tell kids, like when they're in college looking for their career path, do exploratory interviews. But I tell teenagers that this is a great time to do exploratory interviews and find people that are in your area of interest, and ask them, what's it like working in in biosciences, and really get into their brain. And there's a chapter on entrepreneurship. Jason, one of the contributing authors, he was teaching that personal branding class. Now he's teaching entrepreneurship to middle school kids. And mark my word, we are going to ultimately see entrepreneurship as part of high school and middle school curriculum more frequently. And it doesn't matter, like a lot of people hear the word entrepreneur and they'll say, oh, that's only for kids that want to start their own business. It's not. A lot of the character traits of an entrepreneur is what colleges are looking for, and also ultimately job recruiters, like grit, resilience, innovation, creativity. And I myself, as an entrepreneur, I started my first business when I was 14. It's not necessarily a skill you're born with and you can acquire.
And I love the part that you're talking about, the networking. I always was afraid of networking, right? Until kind of recently, I'd say maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And it had such a negative connotation for me. And it's actually like how I meet all the people like I want to hang out with now. It's actually it's
Yes,
right. It's fun. It's how I meet people that are like me, that we want to create things together and make things happen, and it grows my business at the same time and all of that. And I love that you're doing some work to help kind of bust up, in a way, like fear of doing that, or helping them learn at an early age that this is just a wonderful enhancement to your life. It doesn't need to be this thing that, I'm just speaking from my perception of what it was.
yes,
It's like, oh, that feels so scary, whatever. No, it's having a conversation with somebody else. It's meeting somebody and having a conversation, building a relationship. It's getting to know them really well. It doesn't need to be this scary thing where we, have to do things a certain way. So I love that you're laying that foundation for people at an early age, because that is a life skill for applying for college
yeah,
or
yeah,
building a business or getting a
yes.
job or just,
For
finding
right for
friends.
yeah,
Or
for
yeah,
absolutely everything, and it
right.
is about building relationships. And a lot of time teens are much more comfortable with like a texting format, but to be able to set up a Zoom call with with an alumni, or do an exploratory interview, these are all skills that you need for life.
Yes. Yes. And you've talked about several different tips and a lot of do's for getting into college, right? We've talked about some things that we should be doing. Are there any things that, like, hold up, kids should not be doing, like any no's that we need to caution people about? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, without a doubt, the Harvard case again, because there are a lot of smart kids that uh, don't do smart things. And and look, that's also part of being an entrepreneur, that they're a risk taker, that if they, they're just like, oh, I'll never get caught. Like, I just changing your mindset to not taking that chance if it's going to blunt your goals to achieve whatever your success is, and only you can define your success. So in terms of what not to do, again, the thing I heard time and time again, especially with the essays from admission officers, is they can smell a million miles away when an essay has been written by a parent, or they've hired an essay writer. So, you know, what makes me a little nervous is all these AI, the chat GPT.
Yeah.
It's let your voice shine through. And the other thing is that don't, like go out of your comfort zone. I think kids have to go out of their comfort zone, because again, all of this is about standing out. And and again, showing college admission officers, or if you're going for a scholarship, or if you're interviewing for a job, how can you get to the top of the decision makers pile? And there could be certain things that a kid could do. I'd rather talk about like what they could do. One of them is, I always recommend creating your own website. That is very impressive. The challenge is that a lot of times, like John Smith, johnsmith.com, you're not going to get that URL. And funny enough, that I've told my business partner at Co-Communications, she has two young boys and she was struggling over one of their names. And when I said to her, listen, before you pick a final name, just make sure that the URL is available. So I actually coach parents who are, like 8 months pregnant, and toiling over coming up with a name, because it's
Yeah.
a great marketing asset to have.
Mhm.
You might not do something with it right away, but if you can get it earlier on, grab it. So website is one thing. I love video.
Mm.
Show them, tell your story through video. Again, you want to be careful, like, the setting of video, you typically want it short form, like 60, 90 seconds. You want to rehearse it, and even think about it another touch point. And this really goes for anyone, it doesn't matter what age. but your email signature line is a really valuable place for real estate. So what can you put in your email signature line? You know, maybe it is your photo. Maybe it's your photo of you. You're a regular volunteer to a food bank, and you know you have a picture of yourself wearing that or engaged it with some activity, or you also can link with your to your website. So again, there's so many different touch points. It's interesting because, as you know, I interviewed many admissions officers as well as educational consultants. There's one chapter in the book called Winning the College Admission Game, where I took quotes from 42 top admissions officers, educational consultants. There's one that I need to call out because I think that this really is like would be the headline of just tips that I heard. And it was Hans Hansen, and he's actually in your state of Connecticut. He's an educational consultant, and he says, distinguish yourself from others in meaningful ways. Be one of 10. Don't be in a pack of 9. So again, this is what we're doing here is helping kids stand out, because these days more than any other time in history, you've got to be a master of first impressions. There's so much noise, there's so much clutter out there. So kids and adults alike, we just need to figure out, like, again, what is the gift of us that we're giving to whoever our audience is.
And what that makes me think of what you said before, that it's not like a selfish, like me, look at me, blah, 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 right? It's actually doing a service it's honoring ourselves, but it's also doing a service to whoever we're meeting or the kids are meeting, right? That they are saying, hey, I figured out what I can bring to the table on this. I've figured out what I can share, what my gifts are that are going to be an asset to you, right? And so it makes it easier for the person to see that if you've kind of distinguished that, and they can, because people do have a shorter capacity now. We're just all maxed out, right? In the world, there's a lot of maxed out. And if people can bring that to us, or the college admissions officer, or like the employer, whoever the person is, then it makes it's an easier, an easier exchange, that easier connection. And then that's helping the teen, it's helping the kids get into a place where they're going to thrive better because they're being seen for what they know that they can bring, right? And
Yes, yes.
so
Yeah, it's really about crystallizing your uniqueness, you know, and then sharing it with the world. So once you figure that out, it's you know, it's a self-assessment. Again, most people, and it's not just teens, want to skip over that step
right.
and go to the next shiny penny. It's like, oh, I'm gonna get on TikTok. That's fine. And TikTok may be a perfect channel for you, but first figure out like who you are and why you should be chosen for whatever you want in life.
Yes, and we have a question here from our audience. How much time does an admissions counselor on average take to review an application?
That's a great question. So on average, 10 minutes,
Whew,
which is not a long
a lot
time.
of time. Yes.
And that's why I go back to, you've got to stand out. You've got to be a master of first impressions. Like you've got to choose every single word carefully. And there's certain attributes that, and I have them in the book. There's certain characteristics that admissions officers are looking for. So let's name a couple of them: leadership,
Mm-hmm.
collaboration, teamwork, creativity, empathy, social good, work ethic, motivation, innovation. So again, you want to make sure that some of these characteristics are coming out in different ways.
Mm.
10 minutes is not a very long time at all.
No, it's not. And what an important 10 minutes that is. So we want to make
Yes,
sure.
yes.
Yeah, so kids want to make sure that they're highlighting and people want that they're really focused and giving their best in that space. And so you talked about LinkedIn and you talked a little bit about TikTok that people are like in using TikTok. Is there, so you recommend use as far as the social media platforms that are the most important, you'd say that LinkedIn is the most important?
LinkedIn is
Yeah,
every kid at age 16 should be on LinkedIn.
yeah.
However, depending on the interests of a particular student, again, if they're an artist, they may want to develop a website that holds their
Mm,
portfolio and point to that through different social platforms. But they will definitely want to be on Instagram,
mhm,
Pinterest, and more visual type of formats. Or if somebody is, obviously wants to get into theater, YouTube, TikTok, those are great platforms. The same for a kid that it wants sports,
mm,
again, showing them not only like playing sports and throwing the football, and reaching their goal, but also being good citizens.
mm.
Maybe going with, in their football outfit to, a youth organization and talking to them about the importance of being a good teammate.
Mm. Wonderful. And I think I like that you talked about video too, of how important video is. And that can be, as I've done more videos and things like this and interviews, in my life, it allows you to get more comfortable expressing yourself and in communicating with others in a public way. And that is going to serve them the rest of their life too, being able be more comfortable in that communication and relationship building as well, utilizing that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I remember being in college, and one of the most useful classes that I took was interviewing. And so we would record, there was an interviewee and an interviewer, and we would record it and then play it back. And I think that class would be great for high school kids.
Right.
Because again, this is not an inborn skill. Yes, there are so many kids, and when I jump on TikTok, that like, wow, they're such naturals. They're almost like, have they had any acting training? But that's not most kids. So again, I always say, I don't like the saying practice makes perfect. I always say practice makes progress. So you keep practicing, and don't just rely on yourselves. Share it with family and friends. And also, one thing that we haven't spoken about, but is very important in in defining your personal brand, is to ask others how they perceive of you.
Mm, mm,
Jeff Bezos from Amazon once said, your personal brand is what others say about you when you are not in the room. So again, and this all goes back to reputation management. And this is an important component to start early, because we all know that one tweet can damage someone's reputation. And we see it plays out in the news every single day. So it also goes back to the question. So let's just say I'm an admissions officer and I say, why should I choose you? And part of any decision, there's an emotional component. And part of it is there's a likability factor, but there's also a trust factor. So if there are red flags during, a job interviewing process or an admissions process, the trust is eroded.
mm, mm. Yeah. And is there, anything else that you want to make sure that people know about college admissions and branding, just overall, that I'm not thinking about?
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah,
Any effort?
absolutely. Okay, so a lot of schools have gone test optional. So a lot of schools don't even require SATs or ACTs. So it makes it even more challenging. So whereas even we're talking about like 5 or 10 years ago that that the GPA and the SAT, ACT, the courses that you took in high school were
Hmm.
ultra important. They
Hmm.
are looking at different things right now. They're
Hmm.
looking at character. They are looking at, will this kid be a good fit for this college? And so you need to do your homework. You need to speak to the students that are on the campus and,
Hmm.
and almost model after them. But the other thing is that, so let's just say an admissions officer has two students and same exact, GPA, same test scores. How are they going to choose? So what's going to get them over
Hmm.
that decision line?
Hmm.
And it will be the kid that has done something different. So it wouldn't be a typical extracurricular activity. And I don't even know like what that is, but maybe
Hmm.
a typical club you might be in school. It will more likely be the kid that during COVID, he or she created an online tutoring class for elementary or middle schools to help them get through COVID. So again, that's the kind of thinking you have to come to the table. And that's why, I think the word of the day is intentional. You can't just like jump into the tactics. And you really have to be very deliberate and methodical about the way you go about college admissions now more than ever.
Mm. Yeah, it sounds like the person who is thinking a little bit out of the box and willing to do that extra step to take that step forward out of the norm might be the one that's selected now when all things are equal in the other.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, this is not just for college admissions, but this will get you also, who knows, maybe that coveted job at Google. So again, it's like learning this practice now will carry you into your life success. And again, it's however you define it, because the one thing that I do want to say is that this book is not just for kids that want to go to the Ivy League schools. It's, I want to level the playing field. This book, it's for kids that may want to go into a trade like carpentry or hairdressing, or it could be for a kid that maybe they did have that successful business in high school and want to take a gap year or two and scale the business and see where they land. And as parents, it's sometimes very difficult because the norm is just to go right into college after high school. But it's again, every kid is different. Every kid has their own definition of success. Every kid has their passion, and ultimately it's their life to lead. And we just need to give them the tools, for success.
Mm. Thank you so much for putting this together and making this available. I'm so excited to see where this book goes and how many kids get to be helped through this. I'm really just so excited about that. I want to ask about you before we wrap up. Are there any other books in your future that you might be interested in?
Funny you ask, Liz, because my publisher and I have been in conversations about coming out with a book in 2024 geared towards college age and early career kids. The truth of the matter is that a lot of what's in this book, there's a lot of universals. A lot of like 50 something year old women have even said, wow, I've gotten a lot out of this book.
Right, I'm thinking
So so
I
so
can use
I
a lot
so
of
I
this.
want this And I know,
Right?
you being in the publishing world, you'll understand, like, I want Brand Up almost to be like the new chicken soup series, that there's books for different stages and niches.
Mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because that makes total sense that that would be a book that is needed right now. And yeah, I know that I got so much out of it myself as I was looking through it. So thank you for creating it. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and talk through so many great tips for teens and for families that are going through it with teens, so that we can all help our kids be successful in life going forward. And like you said earlier, it's available all over the place. Basically anywhere you'd want to purchase the book, you can make it available. And your website is it brandupbook.com?
Brandupbook.com. Yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
people can access that and connect with Stacey through that. Anything else you'd like to have audience
I
know?
just wanted to say thank you. And also, if a lot of times teens won't necessarily want to speak to their parents about the college admissions process, but I just want to, if your teens like want a couple of gems, I'm more than happy to speak with them, or if they're having any challenges, more than happy to speak to them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Liz.